Forced demolition in Beijing in the freezing winter. Elderly people spend their life savings on their houses. Now they are homeless. China is suspected of spying on American cell phone users through Caribbean mobile networks. Tens of thousands are affected. Chinese state-run companies are unable to pay billion-dollar debts, but they are rated as AAA, the highest rank for debt credit. And China is building a new Great Wall with over 1,000 miles complete at the border of South China to Myanmar. Is it to stop the spread of the CCP virus or to prevent its own citizens from leaving the country? Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Beijing authorities are demolishing residents' homes. Despite the freezing winter temperatures, some elderly 90-year-olds are now facing homelessness after spending their life savings on their homes. NTD's Don Ma has the details.
An 80-year-old Chinese man is begging authorities for mercy. He says his grandfather served China and fought during war. But despite his family's sacrifices, the man's home is being forcibly torn down by the communist regime. Forced demolitions have started in a residential area of Beijing called Xiangtang Village. Footage and inside sources tell us the area's elderly residents have not been spared from devastation. Local sources explain that there are nearly 4,000 households in the village. But according to a notice from authorities, about 500 households will be demolished in the first round of demolitions. The sources said officials gave residents 7 days to move out, noting that the regime will threaten anyone who fails to leave with financial penalties. That includes having their pensions or retirement benefits taken or being forced to pay demolition fees. For those who still refuse, they'll be put on a regime blacklist. The village is home to a number of retired citizens, some over 90 years old. Many of them report spending their life savings on their homes, aiming to spend their final years there. One elderly man was spotted loudly crying in grief and protest over now being forced into homelessness. To force residents out of their homes, authorities are cutting off water, electricity, and natural gas heating. In the middle of winter, weather forecasts put temperatures as low as 17 degrees Fahrenheit, putting evicted residents into a dire situation. Homeowners condemned the regime's forced demolitions, saying the situation is wreaking havoc on the country and its people. Among the homeowners cut off from electricity and water is a 90-year-old professor at a Beijing university. On Tuesday morning, he declared he would embark on a hunger strike in protest. His actions have attracted online attention. He questioned why his water and electricity were cut off after he paid for them. Beijing's weather forecast for next week puts temperatures well below freezing. The evicted homeowners told us local authorities say the decision to tear down property was made by top officials. Reporting by Don Ma, NTD News.
Private companies in China are on the cutting board. Some of them have already been dealt with by the communist regime. Now they are asked to learn from an entrepreneur of a century ago.
Beijing is demanding that private enterprises using their industrial business to serve the country. During a forum for business owners over the weekend, the Chinese regime's United Front Work Department asked attendees to learn from Zhang Jian, a Chinese entrepreneur and politician active a century ago. Aside from running companies and factories, Zhang devoted his life to charity, helping to found a handful of universities, schools, and other institutions. A vice minister from the United Front Work Department called on entrepreneurs to, quote, advance and retreat together with the CCP and share the same destiny. He asked private companies to help shoulder the social responsibilities of the country. The vice chairman of China's National Federation of Industry and Commerce also gave remarks during the forum. He claimed private entrepreneurs should realize that personal success is not only due to their own efforts, but is also a result of, quote, benefits from the party. He added that they must then be grateful for the party. But authorities appear to be forcing China's private entrepreneurs to serve the party, voluntarily or not. In recent months, 2 billionaire entrepreneurs have been arrested in China. One is Sun Dawu, who was detained for what police called provoking trouble and sabotaging production and operation. His company, plus around 30 subsidiaries, were taken over by authorities. He has an annual output value of nearly $500 million. According to the police, the second entrepreneur, Yang Zhongyi, was apprehended for illegally taking money from the public, using high interest rates as bait to lure people in. In 2017, his company brought in about $8 billion in total revenue. Ma Yongtian is a former businesswoman from China, now based in the U.S. She says she believes Beijing is taking business owners' wealth to fill the financial holes caused by corrupt officials.
His intention is to rob the people of their money. The treasury is empty. 30 years ago, the regime reformed and opened up society, which let some people get rich. People began to desperately earn money, find their own business opportunities, their own investment, and started their own businesses. Now you say, take it away. Isn't this called open robbery? The private sector rarely relies on state funding, and every step they take is on their own. Now that the country's economy is dying, you want these individuals to fill the holes made by your corrupt officials.
Back in November, Chinese Communist Party head Xi Jinping called on private entrepreneurs to learn from Jiang Qian and emulate the idea of shouldering social responsibility. Former entrepreneur from Shanghai, Hu Liren, read between the lines.
What's Xi Jinping's thinking now? He wants entrepreneurs to surrender. If you take all your assets and share them with the whole society, then your life may be spared. And ownership of your company will be acquired through state-owned capital, or it will be transferred and nationalized.
Who said Xi Jinping knows that the larger the country's private capital, the bigger the risk that Chinese people will use their money to go against the regime. Because of that, Xi aims to take over the wealth of the private sector. Reporting by Chang Chun, Grace Wang, NTD News.
The newest move from Chinese authorities to big private companies came this Monday. China's antitrust watchdog fined Alibaba Group, Tencent Group, and SF Express Company about $80,000 each for failing to seek approval before acquiring other companies. Alibaba is one of the world's biggest online trading platforms. Tencent is an internet business firm with the largest scale in China. It is also the world's largest video game vendor. These companies became a monopoly only with the approval and tremendous support of the Chinese regime. But now it's turned the trend and fined them for antitrust violations. To these companies, some dozens of thousands of dollars are quite a small amount. But the move delivers a clear warning to private companies. China is suspected of spying on American cell phones through Caribbean mobile networks. That's according to UK-based media The Guardian. The article cites Gary Miller, a Washington state-based former mobile network security executive. Miller's report says an examination of signaling messages between foreign and U.S. mobile operators appears to show surveillance activities. Miller says these attacks seem to enable China to target, track, and intercept phone communications from U.S. phone users traveling abroad. He told a media outlet that U.S. mobile phone operators could have been more alert when it comes to security, adding that they do have the ability to block China's attempts. He explained he shared his concerns with the media to make people aware of what he called the severity of this activity, and to encourage the U.S. to ramp up measures against Beijing. His analysis reveals China's most serious surveillance activity came in 2018. It targeted U.S. 3G and 4G network users through telecom company China Unicom. Tens of thousands of mobile phone total users were reportedly affected from 2018 to 2020. The Federal Communications Commission issued a warning in April, threatening to shut down China Unicom in the U.S., citing concerns about the company's vulnerability to the Chinese Communist Party. Chinese law demands Chinese companies hand over all data to authorities at will if the request is made under the pretext of safeguarding the country's national security. Several major state-owned companies in China have recently defaulted on their debts. The wave of financial trouble has now caught the public eye. In some cases, the corporations were unable to pay millions or even billions in debt. But at the same time, they're some of the highest-rated businesses on the credit rating scale. One case from this year suggests the bug may lie in the rating agencies. Two managers of a state-run rating company were recently fired and expelled from the Chinese Communist Party. That's after they were found to be accepting bribes. China's Commission for Inspecting Corruption published details of their crimes online Tuesday. Jing Yongshou worked as general manager of Golden Credit Rating International, while Cui Runhai served as general manager for the same company's branch in Jiangsu province. Chinese media reported Cui once promised to help raise the credit rating of one customer's company. As a reward, the customer offered him over $300,000. After the rating report was issued, the client's company cashed in. Cui claimed he hadn't known a debt rating increase could bring in dozens or even hundreds of times more money for the company. A company's credit rating is an important factor when seeking aid from banks and other financial institutions. For companies, a high rating can reduce financial costs, bringing in more money. In China, the highest rating is AAA, while the lowest is D. The number of imprisoned journalists reaches a record high this year, a 10% increase from last year. And Chinese authorities made the most arrests among all countries. NTD's Becky Zhou has the story.
Over 270 journalists were jailed worldwide as of December 1st. This is unprecedented since the Committee to Protect Journalists began collecting data in 1992. The New York-based group says China is the world's worst jailer of journalists for the second year in a row. The regime detained 47 in 2020, the highest of any country in the world. Joel Simon, executive director of CPJ, says in a statement, "It's shocking and appealing that we are seeing a record number of journalists imprisoned in the midst of a global pandemic." The European Union is calling on the Chinese regime to release all detained reporters. The regime also detained several Chinese citizen journalists for covering the pandemic. Zhang Jian shared videos about what was happening in Wuhan, criticizing the government's virus containment measures. She opposed the local government's plan to roll out virus testing at about $25 per person. Chinese police detained her in June and detained her in Shanghai. She is facing charges of maliciously speculating about the pandemic by speaking to overseas media. Chinese human rights defenders say jail staff force-fed Zhang via a tube after she went on a hunger strike. Chen Qiushi published more than 100 posts on YouTube and Twitter regarding the virus outbreak in Wuhan. He filmed interviews with locals who had lost loved ones due to the pandemic. Authorities harassed Chen's parents, probing for his location. Chen's friend said the regime forcibly quarantined Chen even though he had no virus symptoms as means of detention. Reporting by Becky Zhou, NTD News.
Australia is suffering under China's trade sanctions, but experts believe China is suffering more. China imposed high tariffs and bans on Australian imports. On the list are barley, wine, beef, lamb, coal, timber, and lobster. And more may come later. The highest tariff was imposed on Aussie wine at a record high of 210%. Research from the Australian Bureau of Agricultural and Research Economics and Sciences indicates a loss of about $250 million for Australian farmers. But China's loss would be more than that, reaching a total of $2.7 billion. Take coal, for example. Chinese media outlets reported China's top economic planner had granted approval to power plants over the weekend to import coal without clearance restrictions, except from Australia. This is China's official ban on Australia's coal. But the unofficial ban has been already underway for 2 months. More than 50 ships loaded with Australian coal have been drifting on the sea close to China's coast since October. Chinese ports were told by their authorities not to offload the shipments. Coal is the third largest export from Australia, and China is Australia's largest trading partner. China's rejection of Australia's coal drove coal prices up in China dramatically. The price of thermal coal on the Chinese commodity exchange went up by around 25% within half a month. On December 11th, in a single day, its price surged another 4%, reaching a record high. Thermal coal is widely used as the major means of generating electricity. China is building what it calls the Southern Great Wall along the 1,200-mile border with its southern neighbor, Myanmar. For most of it, the barrier will be a barbed wire fence. A small part consists of an iron fence. Kokang, a self-administered zone in northern Myanmar, stated the first phase of the border project has been completed. It is 400 miles in length. The second phase will be completed by the end of next year. By then, more than 1,300 miles of new border fencing will divide the two countries. The third phase will be completed in 2022, with surveillance cameras and infrared alarms installed in all places, and high-voltage power grids in spots where illegal crossing is more likely to occur. As for the purpose of the barrier, different sources use different wording. China's media says the fence is to stop illegal crossings, to control CCP virus outbreaks. Radio Free Asia said it could also prevent Chinese dissidents from fleeing the country. Myanmar says China is trying to prevent its citizens from smuggling themselves into Myanmar. Earlier this year, China started to build a barbed wire wall at its border with Vietnam, with the same reason of limiting border interactions to control CCP virus outbreaks. From another perspective, with more factories moving from China to Vietnam, more Chinese people are moving to Vietnam for work. This is also considered to be a reason for building the wall. South Korea on Monday banned the launching of propaganda leaflets into North Korea, drawing the criticism of rights activists and defiance from a prominent North Korean defector. He said he would not stop sending messages to his homeland. Soraya Ali reports.
South Korea has formally banned its citizens from sending propaganda leaflets into North Korea, with violators facing up to 3 years in prison or roughly $27,000 in fines. For North Korean defectors like Park Sang-hak, it's not enough to give up his 15-year campaign.
Even if they put us in jail or fine us 30 million won, we'll keep sending leaflets to North Korea to tell the truth, because North Koreans have the right to know.
For decades, activists and defectors like Park have sent anti-North Korean leaflets over the tightly guarded border using balloons or bottles. They also send food, medicine, money, mini radios and USB sticks with South Korean news and dramas. The South Korean parliament voted on Monday to bar any scattering of printed materials or items of value across the frontier. Park and some other 20 rights groups in South Korea have vowed to challenge the law's constitutionality, while Human Rights Watch called the ban a misguided strategy by South Korea to win the North's favor.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.